Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about some high-risk, high-reward wide receivers for fantasy football in 2021. We're going to be talking about 3 wide receivers that encompass the category of high-risk, high-reward players. So if you guys see any players that are not talked about in this video and you feel like they would be under this title of high-risk, high-reward, let me know down below in the comment section, and let me know if you end up liking them or not for fantasy football in 2021. If you guys do end up liking this video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below if you are new, because it's free and I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And if you're already subscribed, I appreciate you. Please make sure to hit that like button down below as well. So the first wide receiver I want to talk about in today's video is definitely a guy that some people really like, and some people are definitely fading. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, currently on Underdog ADP, which is a best ball website. His ADP is 58.8. Now, Deontay Johnson, as a wide receiver, was a guy that I was beating the drum for last year as a sleeper, and it turned out that my call was correct. In 15 games, he finished as wide receiver number 21 in PPR, 22 in half PPR, and wide receiver number 26 in standard, playing in 15 games for the Steelers last season, averaging 14.8 PPR points per game, 11.9 half PPR points per game, and 8.9 standard points per game. Meaning, from a points per game perspective, Deontay Johnson was the wide receiver 21 in PPR, 22 in half PPR, tied with about 7 other wide receivers, and wide receiver 31 in standard leagues. Now, the reason why I would say Johnson kind of has this sort of aura around him is because last year the guy frankly could not hold on to the football. There were so many times where Deontay Johnson is out there and the ball just hits this guy right in his hands, right in the breadbasket, and he ends up just dropping the ball. He even got benched in a game later in last season. Mike Tomlin was so tired of these wide receivers dropping it. Him and Eric Ebron just had butterfingers last season, and Tomlin was sick of it, and he benched Deontay Johnson for half of a game. And Deontay Johnson also dealt with some injuries last season, as he got knocked out of a couple of games due to injury. He had a foot sprain in week number 1 of the 2020 NFL season, a concussion in week 3, and a back injury in week 5. So he was racking up those injuries just like Jameis Winston racks up them W's. But even with the injuries, this man had 144 targets last season, 6th highest at the wide receiver position for 88 receptions, 13th highest at the wide receiver position, and only 924 receiving yards, 25th at the wide receiver position, and 7 total touchdowns, 19th at the wide receiver position. Now, why does he have all these targets and not so many receptions? Again, it's because this guy drops the ball so often. He had the number 1 overall amount of drops at the wide receiver position with 11 total drops last year. Now, obviously, the thought process behind Deontay Johnson to want to fade him is that he's going to continue to drop the ball, that there's him. Juju didn't really light it up all last year. Deontay Johnson's going to look better, or not Deontay Johnson, I say Juju's going to look better, Claypool's going to be good, and they just brought in Najee Harris, so maybe it's a too many cooks in the kitchen scenario to someone who would want to be fading Deontay Johnson. Now, the argument against him is maybe he actually catches the ball now. Maybe when he's getting all these targets and he's catching them, he turns out to be really good, which is the kind of standpoint that I am going for with Deontay Johnson and as to why I really like him. Now, obviously, another knock against Deontay Johnson has to be the fact that Big Ben seems like he is on his last dance, last dance, Michael Jordan and the Bulls style type of season, because it seems like Big Ben just keeps on getting hurt, and I'm just not too sure about how much more of a beating this guy can take before he finally taps out and is done playing in the NFL. But overall, I think that Deontay Johnson is a very solid player. I think that those drops should be able to go away, and on an offense that should be relatively solid, I think that Deontay Johnson should still be able to feast, as I like him much more than Juju in this offense, and he's pretty close to Claypool in my opinion, but I'd even rank Deontay Johnson higher than Claypool. It's one of those kind of cases where the guy's a bad football player, but he's going to be getting so many targets, this Deontay Johnson, he's going to be getting so many targets, just get absolutely fed like Zeke on Thanksgiving dinner, that I think Deontay Johnson is going to be able to have a great 2021 NFL season for fantasy football. Next up, we got wide receiver DJ Chark, underdog ADP 70.2. Now, last year, I'm taking DJ Chark's numbers and throwing them out the goddamn window. Now, I'm going to recite all of his numbers, but you need to keep in mind that this Jaguars offense this whole team had to have been purposely losing. They have Gardner Minshew, who plays pretty good week 1. They win week 1. They don't win another game ever since week number 1. You want to know why? Because they pull Gardner for Mike Glennon, for Mike Luton, some French guy. He ends up playing quarterback. So it's like they're just purposely losing. Now he gets Trevor Lawrence, and it seems like DJ Chark is the clear wide receiver 1, the alpha guy in this offense, as he does have the build, in my opinion, to be a alpha wide receiver in the NFL. 6'3", 199 pounds. In 13 games, Mr. DJ Chark, baby Chark himself, finished as wide receiver 48 in PPR, 48.5 PPR, and 48 in standard, averaging 11.8 PPR points per game, 9.8 half PPR points per game, and 7.7 standard points per game, meaning from a points per game perspective, he was wide receiver 43 in PPR, 42.5 PPR, and wide receiver number 41 in standard. So all those numbers were obviously not very good. They were no bueno, as they would say. And is that because DJ Chark is a bad player? In my opinion, no. It's because the whole team shit the bed last year. He didn't have a competent quarterback throwing him the ball. And you want to know what the difference is? It's now Trevor Lawrence, touchdown Jesus, the guy with the luscious hair himself, throwing DJ Chark the ball. DJ Chark, according to playerprofiler.com, ran a 98th percentile 40-yard dash with a 4.34, 96th percentile speed score, 92nd percentile burst score. And you want to know who can throw it deep down the field? Trevor fucking Lawrence. And you want to know who is going to have a better season in 2021? DJ effing Chark. Now, obviously, with Marvin Jones there, that could take a tick down on DJ Chark, and I actually kind of feel like taking shots later in the draft on a guy like Marvin Jones, but I still think that DJ Chark holds a lot of value in this offense. Last year, with very slim pickings, had 94 targets, 40th highest at the wide receiver position, for a grand total of 53 receptions and 706 receiving yards, 48th highest at the wide receiver position, for 5 total touchdowns. After a pretty excellent 2019 campaign, it seemed like the door was wide open for an excellent season out of Mr. Chark, but obviously Mike Glennon said, psych, that's the wrong number. Doug Marrone did not want DJ Chark to succeed, and he frankly did not. But in 2021, whether you like Urban Meyer or not, I believe that Trevor Lawrence is such a big step up for DJ Chark that he is going to be able to provide a very solid fantasy season in 2021 with the ADP of 70.2 on Underdog. If you sign up on there, use code Notorious. And final player in the video, but before we get to him, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We're about halfway through, 2/3 of the way through the video. Make sure that you can do that. So my final player to discuss today is Tyler Lockett, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, underdog ADP 50.7. He is going to be a guy that I genuinely am so confused about, because on one hand, I see a whole lot of upside in Tyler Lockett. A whole lot of upside. That's why he's high risk, or high reward, I should say. That's why. But he's high risk because on a weekly basis, this guy's numbers fluctuate so much. I'm going to be talking about that in a couple of seconds. So in 16 games last year, Mr. Lockett finished as wide receiver 8 in PPR, 9.5 PPR, and wide receiver 11 in standard. So you might be thinking, Nick, why is his ADP so low? Or so not really low, because low would be like top 10, right? He's super far back. I guess, I don't know how you would want to word that. I guess his ADP isn't high. It's kind of low. He's wide receiver 50. Or not wide receiver 50, just overall player 50. He's not a top 10 wide receiver off the board. He's not even like a top 15 wide receiver off the board. It's due to that inconsistency, averaging 16.6 PPR points per game, 13.5 half PPR points per game, and 10.3 standard points per game, meaning from a points per game perspective, he was wide receiver 12 in PPR, 12.5 PPR, and wide receiver number 16 in standard. So if you look at his game log, this is why the confusion is so strong. Week 1, he starts off pretty solid. Drops 17.2 points, is like wide receiver 20 on the week. Then the next week against New England, he's wide receiver 11. Then he's wide receiver number 1 against Dallas. So great job. Excellent start to the season. Pretty solid. And then he's wide receiver 76, wide receiver 50. And then he becomes wide receiver 1 against Arizona week 7. Then he's wide receiver 54, 62, 31, 11, 71, 42, 42, 65, 61, 5. So you can see that even the points per game perspective number is kind of a fucking lie, because those big games where you're dropping 53 points, 37 points, or 33 points are carrying that number so heavily. That's why Tyler Lockett is very risky, because on a weekly basis, you don't know what's going to end up happening. He is probably the high-risk wide receiver that I like the least out of these guys, because he's going the highest, and I feel like his risk is much higher due to that. I think that Lockett could be very good, but another worry of mine is that Seattle seems to want to just run the fucking ball. Early on in the season, Russ is cooking, Chef Curry with the pop boy, he's balling out, and then magically they start trying to run the ball. Then after the season, Mr. Pete Carroll, the gum chewer, he goes ahead and says, oh, you know, we need to establish the run more. We need to do this. We need to do that. So he's basically just telling Russell Wilson to go fuck himself, is basically what he's saying. Mr. Lockett last year had 132 targets for a grand total of 100 receptions, 5th highest at the wide receiver position, 1,054 receiving yards, 15th highest at the wide receiver position, and 10 total touchdowns, 7th highest at the wide receiver position. So again, he probably will finish as like a top 15 guy. But on a weekly basis, I don't want anything to do with Tyler Lockett. But if we're talking about best ball, I like Tyler Lockett a lot, because he does provide a lot of upside every week. But when it's a redraft league, when you're trying to set your lineup every single week, trying to think, when do I play Lockett? The answer is every week, but he's going to fuck you over half the time, because it's impossible to figure out when he's going to be good, because he's playing up against these tough defenses, right? And he scores like 30 points, but then he'll play up against a cupcake soft matchup, and the guy scores like 2 points. So it, my opinion, is very hard for me to want to be drafting Tyler Lockett in 2021. Let me know down below in the comment section your guys' opinion on Deontay Johnson, Mr. DJ as well, DJ Chark, and Tyler Lockett. Let me know if you like any of these guys, or you're fading them. They're a little too risky for your biscuit. So let me know down below. I love you guys all. Thank you so much for the support we have shown or seen recently on my channel. 12.2 thousand subscribers. We're going to keep on trucking all the way until 20,000. I love you guys so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. Stay safe. Make sure to write down below, if you're still here, write down bazooka. Is that what these things are called? Yeah, bazooka. Bazooka bubblegum, baby. Make sure to write that down below in the comments. I love you guys all. Have a great rest of your guys' day. Goodbye.